Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, change is coming to a small-town fire department. Voters in Julian decide they no longer want volunteers to do the job. We'll tell you how the town will be protected moving forward. And waiting for their final paychecks. After the Art Institute suddenly closed, workers say they still haven't been paid what they're owed.
It's just a piece of fabric, and yet it sets off an entire chain of events that either allows a woman to go to work, a child to go to daycare, or not.
A San Diego Assemblywoman gets help from an Emmy Award-winning actress in her push to repeal the state's tax on diapers.
I think when we look back at all this, historically, it's going to be a very sad chapter in our world.
And a documentary filmmaker talks about covering the Central American migrants who are stuck in Tijuana. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. It's Thursday, March 21st. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego County's last all-volunteer fire department may soon be dissolved. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar has been covering the situation in Julian and has an update on the special election. Priya?
Ebony, in preliminary results, 55% of residents voted to dissolve the area's all-volunteer department and consolidate with the County Fire Authority. Last year, the Fire Protection Board voted to dissolve the volunteer department, but supporters of the volunteers gathered enough signatures to bring the issue to a special election. The Registrar of Voters say they will certify the election on April 4th.
A chance to speak to any of the volunteers or members of the board about these preliminary results.
Ebony, as I mentioned, the last board voted to dissolve the volunteer department, but since then a new board has been sworn in and they all support the volunteers. I did get a chance to speak to one of the members, Bill Everett, today, and he said they're not giving up until all the ballots have been counted. The Registrar of Voters will be counting all ballots that come in by tomorrow as long as they were postmarked by Election Day. Everett said the board plans to have a few closed session meetings to discuss if there are any other options they can pursue. I also spoke, however, to a representative from LAFCO, the local agency formation commission. They're the agency that received the petition signatures that resulted in the special election. Now, they told me that if the Registrar of Voters certifies the result, there are no other legal avenues for the volunteers or their supporters to take to reverse this decision.
So, Priya, what happens from here?
Well, that's a great question, Ebony. Currently, the volunteers are still manning the Julian department. The LAFCO representative I spoke to told me that once the vote is certified, a transition plan will be put into place. He hopes to have the County Fire Authority in control of that area by the end of this fiscal year at the very latest, or July 1st. Back to you, Ebony.
KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar, thanks for that report. Students from the now closed Art Institute of California are looking into transfer options, while former staff are looking for their final checks. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman spoke to former employees who are still waiting for payday.
Given the financial circumstances at present in the receivership, those funds have not yet been secured and your pay is delayed.
Mary Broding is a former English and art history instructor at the Art Institute of California, San Diego. When the school closed 2 weeks ago due to outstanding financial obligations, she and others were told their positions were eliminated and a final paycheck would be coming soon.
And it said specifically in the email that our last paycheck would be March 15th.
But that money hasn't come yet.
I'm not confident that I'm going to get anything unless it's through legal measures taken against the company.
Broding, who taught part-time, says she has bills to pay but should be able to get by.
It's a bit of a setback for me, but it's not something that I can't recover from in the near future. But there's other people who are working nowhere else, who are teaching nowhere else, who are just left high and dry without a last paycheck.
That includes people like former Art Institute of California San Diego librarian Robert CRADDICK.
We received one letter saying we would get paid, and then we got another letter saying the receiver's working on it. And that's just not good enough for people with bills.
He worked at the Art Institute for 13 years and says it was a great place to work, just...
Everyone wants their pay, and they deserve their pay.
CRADDICK says he's applied to a few other librarian positions but has yet to hear back. He has also reached out to a lawyer to see what his options are. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Workers tell us they've received a letter telling them the company is working on a plan to get them paid. And KPBS has reached out to the Art Institute of California for a comment, but have yet to hear back. San Diego City Councilwoman Monica Montgomery is 100 days into her new job at City Hall. She says she has high expectations to fill. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser shows us how Montgomery is checking in with her constituents.
Not every issue will be addressed our first year. Not every issue will be addressed our first year.
It was standing room only at the Skyline Library when Councilwoman Monica Montgomery spoke. She told the large and diverse crowd about what she's done so far in office.
I only gave one promise, and that was to be visible and truthful, so.
She said her 3 priorities are police reform, improving economic opportunities, and constituent services like streetlights and stop signs. She aims to bring more jobs to her district.
But what I said to our city staff, very graciously, is that the things that I see for District 4 are community gardens and banners. I love community gardens and banners. But also like Northrop Grumman, who is receiving incentives in their billion-dollar company.
The crowd was excited Montgomery is now leading the office and has high hopes for what she'll achieve in the coming years. Claire Tragesser, KPBS News.
Montgomery says she'll have regular community events. She's posting details on her online calendar at sandiego.gov. The Trump administration says a record number of people were caught crossing the border illegally last month. More than half were parents and children. AP reporter John Moan shows us how the surge is putting a strain on Border Patrol.
There are thousands of new arrivals on the southern border, waves of parents and children. Carmen Mejia and her son Leon are tired. Mejia's boy is sick with a cold. The group willingly surrenders after crossing the Rio Grande from Mexico. Taking care and feeding immigrants who've crossed into the U.S. illegally has fallen almost solely in one law enforcement agency, the U.S. Border Patrol.
They don't say asylum, but they use a lot of terms. A lot of times they use, I'm scared, I fear for my life. Gangs.
Near Mission, Texas, these people take their first step into the federal immigration system, signing intake forms and showing any documents that can help them declare asylum. More than 66,000 people crossed the border illegally in February, including 36,000 parents and children. That's a record high, according to the United States Border Patrol, and even more families could be coming in the spring when border crossings traditionally pick up. Eventually, these immigrants will go to the Central Processing Facility in McAllen, Texas. The AP was not allowed to film inside, but the agency says it's scrambling to keep up with the volume. The facility received worldwide attention last June during the Trump administration's enforcement of the zero-tolerance policy, which led to thousands of family separations. In the last year, 2 small children died in Border Patrol custody, leading to expanded medical screenings. Officials say this particular center is not meant for families, but that's precisely what they're handling. The average wait here is 60 hours. After release, groups typically arrive at places like the Catholic Charities Respite Center in McAllen, which too is feeling the strain of increased demand and local politics. City commissioners ordered the church to vacate the building by May after complaints from neighbors. For now, the charity provides food and medical checkups before these people move on to their next destination.
What I've found is that they're not really anxious to tell somebody that they've got a fever, or they're not real anxious to tell somebody that they're having an infection or having a problem, because they don't want to detain themselves any longer than what the customary number of days is.
Dr. Martine Garza is one of the volunteers providing care to immigrants like 21-year-old Honduran Lily Romero. She gave birth to her infant son while on a bus, making the journey through Mexico.
But we know that the root of the problem is how these people don't feel safe in their own country. And
community activist Martha Sanchez says building more border wall isn't going to stop the uptick in immigration.
And as long as we don't address that issue, we want to continue to try to put patches and something that is much bigger.
Bigger crowds taxing both federal authorities and local charities. John Moan, Associated Press, McAllen, Texas.
There's a new documentary set to premiere in San Diego on Friday, which focuses on the migrant experience in Tijuana. It's called Stuck in Tijuana, and I'm joined now by filmmaker Charlie MINN. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Charlie, tell us about Stuck in Tijuana.
This documentary gives a human face and a voice to the Central American migrants who made this very dangerous 3,000-mile trip from mainly from Honduras to the northwest tip of Mexico. And you could certainly make the argument that they've been victimized again. I think Tijuana residents, they've been victimized too. So I think when we look back at all this, historically, it's going to be a very sad chapter in our world.
And this part of the world has been getting a lot of attention recently. What's missing from the news coverage?
I think we really need to figure out who these people are that are from Central America, really hear their stories of humanity, of guts. They're saying that they're escaping violence, poverty, lack of opportunities in their homeland. I've never seen so many stray kids in my life. We're talking hundreds of stray kids. One of the rec centers in Tijuana, 1,000 people share one bathroom. So this is a group that completely relies on volunteers for food, shelter, water, and supplies. It's a true humanitarian crisis.
What's been the most striking part of this experience putting this movie together?
The kids. It's not even close. I mean, we're talking about 5-, 6-year-old kids, hundreds of them, running around. They don't even know where their parents are, some of them. Their parents might have been murdered in Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. So when you throw children into the equation, it makes it even more heartbreaking.
So what do you hope people take away after watching your movie?
Guts and humanity. Guts is the most beautiful part of a human being. If you have guts, people will respect you, and a lot of these Central American migrants won my respect for traveling that 3,000 miles through Mexico, a very dangerous country right now. Don't forget, in 2010, 72 migrants were intercepted and kidnapped by the Los Zetas cartel and all shot in the back of the head. So just getting to the border to Tijuana was a feat in itself.
What do you think can be done?
Well, in this case, I think the system has been set up to screw the poor Latino. The metering process, the Remain in Mexico policies, I think our administration has done everything to stick it to the poor Latino. And I just need to be as transparent as possible right now. And unfortunately, that's what I see happening. That's just my opinion.
And I know you talk to college students. We were talking about that. So the young people, if they were to be galvanized based upon this issue, it could be dangerous. What could young people do?
Well, today, I mean, the young generation, the millennials, they're not the future anymore. They're the present. I mean, their power is unlimited because of social media. So documentaries are meant to inform, educate, and raise awareness. So what better setting to do it at a college when you're meant to inform and educate?
And where can people see Stuck in Tijuana?
The movie will open tomorrow, Friday, March 22nd, at the brand new Theater Box. Used to be the old Reading. It's on 5th and G in the heart of the GASLAMP district. It's going to run for at least a week, and I slashed ticket prices 50% because I think humanity over money. That's the most important thing, humanity over money. But you have to get those tickets at the box office. They're reduced by 50%. I told the theater, please do that because the message is too important.
Charlie MINN, director of Stuck in Tijuana, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump signs an executive order tying university research grants to campus free speech protections. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez wants the state to repeal its sales tax on diapers. And today she added some star power to her cause.
This bill would offer just over $100 a year in tax relief. That's enormous to families that are literally choosing between food and diapers.
Gonzalez welcomed Modern Family actress Julie Bowen to Sacramento today. She's advocating for the diaper sales tax repeal. An Assembly committee is expected to vote on the bill next month. Gonzalez says a basic health necessity like diapers should not be taxed. Every year, nearly 500,000 new moms in the U.S. deal with postpartum depression, according to the Center for Disease Control's. Now there's a first-of-its-kind drug to treat the condition. This week, the FDA approved Zulresso, an IV treatment received over a couple of days. One of the doctors involved with the clinical trials says there's a high rate of success.
So this is a significant advance for women suffering with postpartum depression because of the rapid onset, that they're well within 60 hours of receiving the medicine.
Treatment, though, is expensive at a cost of $35,000 for people without insurance. Doctors are working to develop a pill form. A newly approved medication that treats severe depression in people who don't respond to other drugs was tested here in San Diego. KPBS health reporter Susan Murphy talked to the doctor who oversaw the clinical trials and calls the drug a game changer.
I think this is going to be an exciting improvement in the way we deliver care for people with serious depression.
The FDA has approved a novel antidepressant in the form of a nasal spray. Dr. Michael Plopper is director of clinical research at Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital in San Diego, one of the county's largest behavioral health centers. He says esketamine represents the first new depression drug since Prozac hit the market in the 1980s. It's a chemical cousin of the anesthetic and party drug ketamine.
And it's specifically for people who have what's called treatment-resistant depression.
Dr. Plopper says previously only about a third of people who took antidepressant medication had full remission. The other 2/3 had little or no response. He says esketamine offers fast relief.
There is a rapid reduction in symptoms, a matter of hours to days versus weeks to months, as that we experience with the typical antidepressants.
He says there has been a long and urgent need to treat major depression, which he describes as a life-threatening condition because it can lead to suicide.
From 1999 to 2016, the incidence of suicide annually went up about a third over that period of time, and that's a lot.
Dr. Plopper began seeing great potential in the nasal spray when he started testing it in people 5 years ago as part of the drug's clinical trials.
So we've done a number of trials over these years with this medication and are very, very pleased to see it finally come to fruition.
He says it will help a growing number of patients at his hospital in Kearny Mesa. The mental health facility has 158 inpatient beds and helps people who suffer from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, or Alzheimer's disease.
And then among our outpatient services, we have approximately 400 people a day coming to our intensive outpatient programs.
Soon, he plans to open a new certified clinic at the hospital to administer the new drug. That's one of the strict FDA requirements.
People will not be able to take this medication home. It will be administered in a clinic setting. But we observe people for 2 hours before they're able to go home, and then they can't drive until the next day.
The wholesale cost of each treatment in the first month will range from $600 to $900. It's unclear how much insurance companies will cover. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Dry, sunny weather is expected tomorrow and through the weekend. Regina Miller has details in tonight's forecast.
Well, we've been dealing with some showers across the area for about the past 24 hours, and we're still seeing a couple of pop-up showers. You notice some to our north here. Now, as we go into the evening hours, by 6 p.m., still there's going to be some locations picking up a couple of showers around early during the overnight hours as that system moves out. This is at 9 p.m. You can see how it's generally dry across the area. It's going to continue then to be dry through tomorrow morning. We do have a high surf advisory in effect, and that is until 1 p.m. Friday. The highest surf is going to be 4 to 8 feet here in San Diego County, but especially to the south of Del Mar with strong rip currents. So that's something we're dealing with there. Also, winter weather advisories in effect. That's through 8 p.m. this evening above 5,500 feet, where we could see additional snow accumulations up to 2 inches. Now, for the overnight hours, the showers, as I said, will come to an end that we see around the area, and then just partly cloudy skies at 54 degrees. Our temperature for tonight in Borrego Springs is 50. Oceanside checking in at 46 degrees for tonight. Tomorrow, we have pretty dry conditions across the southern part of California here. So in San Diego County, we've got clouds and sunshine. Clouds and sunshine up towards Oceanside at 64. And we have a mixture of sun and clouds here. Mount Laguna checking in at 49 degrees. Our forecast along the coast, partly sunny for your Friday and Saturday, 64 degrees. We'll get into the upper 60s on Monday and Tuesday. On inland locations, we've got partial sunshine for Friday at 66, periods of sunshine on Saturday and 65. It's going to be warming up here with plenty of sunshine on Sunday and Monday. And in the desert locations, we have some sun for Friday at 76 degrees, partly sunny and cool on Saturday. We are going to be warming up on Monday and Tuesday to 84 degrees. And in the mountain areas, partly sunny on Friday at 49. We'll get up to 50 degrees with some sun on Saturday, cool with sunshine here on Sunday, and a temperature of 53 degrees. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS.
20 years ago, John Cameron Mitchell debuted his queer rock musical, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando shows us how a local theater is tackling the play for the first time.
At Diversionary Theater, Hedwig and the Angry Inch is having its first fondle probe. It sounds painful, but artistic director Matt Morrow explains.
You're visiting us during our Vondel probe, which is a rehearsal that we have with the band, and this is only the second rehearsal that the band has had with the cast.
Morrow has been waiting 20 years to direct Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and his memory of seeing it off-Broadway in the 90s is still vivid.
Oh my God, when I first saw Hedwig, it blew me away. It just rocked me to my core.
Don't you know me? I'm the new Berlin Wall. Try and tear me down.
Rocked not just by the score, but also by the story.
Hedwig is the ultimate outsider, and I think that many people connect with that point of view and connect with what it feels like to not be understood and to have to fight to be heard and to be seen as who you are and not what the world wants you to be.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch centers on an East German singer who goes through a botched sex change operation that leaves her with an angry inch, and a gender that's neither male nor female.
We're living in a time right now of considerable political strife, and Hedwig to me is like a superhero with her outlook on life that's just outrageous and bold and brave.
And some were too young to appreciate Hedwig when it first became an underground hit off Broadway.
20 years ago, I was 8 years old, so I hadn't really heard of Hedwig before coming into audition.
Cachet Monnier plays Hedwig's husband, Yitzhak, in what promises to be a very different take on the show.
I don't want to give anything away in terms of the look. I can say that we have some genius designers, and Elisa Benzoni, our costume designer, and Peter Herman, our wig and makeup designer. Most people, when they think of Hedwig, they think of the iconic sort of blonde flip wig. We are paying homage to that with this production, but we are doing something completely different. It's a different time than it was back in the 90s, and I think that Hedwig deserves a new aesthetic.
The look of this new aesthetic is not on display at the rehearsal, except in terms of the casting of the lead role.
We did a nationwide search for a gender non-binary or trans performer to fill Hedwig's boots, and I'm really thrilled with who we found right in our own backyard. Jeremy Wilson is an amazing non-binary actor. It's part of the conversation that we're having as a nation right now, and we have to honor opportunities for non-binary performers, and I think Hedwig is a really great way into that conversation and celebrate the diversity of gender.
Jeremy Wilson remembers the impact Hedwig's song Origin of Love had on him.
That definitely was life-changing because at the time I didn't know the word genderqueer or non-binary, but I've always felt different. And Hedwig is this beautiful creature that doesn't fit into a box. And it really shaped a lot of my life from then on. And I knew from that moment that I wanted to play that role.
And there were 3 sexes, then one that looked like human grew up back to that.
Wilson likes that Hedwig opens up conversations about gender.
We weren't really having those conversations in the 90s as we are today. What I find so beautiful about this piece is that it translates to everyone. And this person's story can, although unique, can really be found in anyone's story when it all boils down.
Society probably isn't ready to dispose of the idea of gender altogether, but maybe it would consider adding new categories that people like Hedwig and Wilson can identify with. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch begins preview performances tonight at Diversionary Theater. Here's a recap of tonight's top stories. Early results of a special election in Julian show voters have approved a plan to dissolve the volunteer fire department. Volunteers will continue to staff the department during the transition. After that, the county fire authority will take over. Former employees of the Art Institute of California say they still haven't received their final paychecks. Campuses across the state, including the one in San Diego, closed without warning 2 weeks ago. KPBS reached out to the Art Institute for comment, but has not received a response. A local assemblywoman is using some star power in her push to repeal the sales tax on diapers. Lorena Gonzalez met with Modern Family actress Julie Bowen today in Sacramento. Bowen is working with lobbyists to push a repeal. A bill authored by Gonzalez is expected to receive its first committee vote next month. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.